Hello everyone. For this Music Talk Tuesday, I thought that it would be cool to discuss songs that deal with missing somebody. The funny thing is this particular topic of a song is discussed a lot, and a lot of people like to use the same words. Missing you, I miss you, miss this, miss that, blah blah blah, and put that within the song title. Like it's just so many. There's just so many I miss you songs out there. It almost becomes I think really cliche. It's almost like you type in I miss you and then there's all these multiple artists that come up. It's like, which I miss you song do you want to listen to? So I figured I'd discuss the ones that I sort of identify with and that I find interesting, and see if anybody else feels the same way or has certain opinions on either one of them, or multiple, or all of them. So without further ado, let me discuss the first song, and the first song is called Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd. This is probably one of the more well-known I miss you kind of songs, because it has that kind of iconic Pink Floyd sort of sound. I think a lot of people, when they associate with this song, they automatically think Pink Floyd. And the interesting thing is that it actually was dedicated to Syd Barrett. And Syd Barrett was a part of the Pink Floyd band, but unfortunately his excessive drug use made it so that he could not be in the band anymore. And so this was kind of sort of a tribute to him, and I guess sort of wishing that he could come back and be sort of part of the band, even though that's not possible. And I think the song sort of reflects the tone. Also, the fact that there's a lot of kind of different kinds of wording within the song that makes it difficult to, I guess, interpret as to exactly what it means. So I think it's hard for me to ultimately say what Pink Floyd is sort of referencing here. Because it's sort of open to, I think, that kind of interpretation. You could interpret what this lyric means and what that one means, and I've heard some people say that it has to do with like maturity and going from being young to being an adult, but I think it's sort of more open in that sense. But the interesting thing is that there's this kind of pain and loneliness that seems to be present throughout the entire song. It's almost like it almost sounds hollow when you kind of listen to it, and it feels sort of empty. And I think that's probably why or how Pink Floyd was feeling during the time, because you know how when you have musicians together making music, you know, when somebody's there, they sort of fulfill the whole community of the band, and when that one person is gone, then it really leaves sort of like this hole. And I think that's really what they were trying to reflect with this song, is this sense of loneliness and a hole. And I think this kind of a hole can transcend into other people's lives and can mean different things to various people. And I think when a song can do that, it's doing something, I think, very effectively. And also by leaving the lyrics open to sort of interpretation, it allows it to be to be a more identifiable song. So I think this song really works, and it does, and I think it can be identifiable for a lot of people who feel like that there is this hole within their life somehow, and that there is somebody out there that sort of fulfilled that hole, and then to have that being stripped away really affects someone, or can affect multiple people depending. So I think that's ultimately what the song was trying to get at, and I think a lot of the times you hear this song as being one of their more famous songs, and I think it's really famous for that reason, in that it's very identifiable to a lot of people, and it can be expressed in more broader terms because the lyrics are sort of open to that sense of interpretation as to what exactly Pink Floyd is saying. So that's ultimately all I can say about Wish You Were Here. The next song, Missing You by John Waite, is actually a different kind of Missing You song. It doesn't have that sense of kind of misery and sort of loneliness that the Pink Floyd song was going for, but it does have this sense of self-denial, because what John's saying throughout the entire song is how he like admires this one particular person, but then he comes back and saying, I don't miss you, I don't, no, nuh-uh, there's no, I don't feel this way. So it is this kind of self-contradiction going on throughout the entire song, and I found that to be interesting, that this song kind of took it upon himself to focus on that, because I feel like a lot of Missing You songs kind of focus in on the misery, but this one I think is more focusing in on the self-denial of missing somebody. And it also has a way different tone too than a lot of Missing You songs. Or songs about missing someone, because it has this kind of power to it, but it's also sort of this kind of restrained pain, because he doesn't really want to express the feelings that maybe Pink Floyd was trying to get across, but instead sort of be a little bit more defensive, because when he says I ain't missing you, he says it in such a way like that's sort of pushing away his true feelings, and it's kind of, I want to say it's kind of like an anger self-defense mechanism. I think sometimes you know if you've been in a situation where you actually do think something, but you want to deny it to somebody else, then you come off with a defensive reaction and say, no, I don't feel that way, ain't missing you. That's kind of how he approaches the song when he's singing. He says like, ain't missing you, like, nope, like really just kind of in a box, like, and it's almost like this anger defensive mechanism that he uses when he's expressing that part of the song. And then he expresses sort of his true feelings, to himself, but then at the same time he sort of just wants to hit those feelings away and say, no, this is not how I'm supposed to feel. So it's really a conflicting song in that sense, and I think it really works to the song's advantage in creating like a different kind of tone, a different kind of atmosphere, and a different kind of way of approaching this kind of emotion compared to Pink Floyd's song. So I believe that's really all I can say about that one. The next song that I wanted to briefly mention is I Miss You by Blink 182. I remember this song when it came out, I think around during middle school time, and I found myself really enjoying the song, and I still enjoy the song a lot today. I would say that it has this kind of similar aspect to it that can be reflected onto the Pink Floyd song, because it says, because there is this kind of sense of loneliness, when the person isn't there. He says at one point, "Where are you?" And I'm so sorry. I cannot sleep. I cannot dream tonight. I need somebody, and always, and something to that effect. And when he says that, it's sort of like when that person's not there, there is this kind of sense of loneliness and of not being able to deal with the separation. So I guess it has that similar tone to Pink Floyd of being really lonely and kind of depressing, but it might be different in the fact that the narrator, I think, feels maybe a little bit more like that, not having that particular person there is making it hard on him as an individual. Whereas with Pink Floyd, it's not really directly referencing to one person missing someone, but somebody wishing, sort of like more of a group of people, or maybe one person wishing they were here, sort of like wanting that person there. But with Blink 182 song, it's kind of like it's kind of a more, I guess, maybe a maybe more intimate emotion going on. At least that's how I feel when I listen to it. I feel like Pink Floyd's is kind of to the point where the distance is a lot, but you still wish that person would come back. And with Blink 182 song, there is this kind of more intimacy in that it's hard for the person to actually function because that other person is somehow not there, because maybe something happened and this resulted in him having this kind of loneliness. So I think there is a sense of maybe that hole, like I mentioned earlier, but I feel like in Blink 182 song, it's a little bit more intimate. It's a little bit more based around like maybe two people, or it just has this more intimate feeling, I think, with the lyrics. Whereas Pink Floyd's is more broader. It's a lot more open to like interpretation, and I feel like with this one, it's trying to build this sense of intimacy, and that there's now a lack of it because that person is not there. So I guess that's how I approach the song. But I believe that's really all I can say about it. So without further ado, moving on to a really famous song. And this song is called "I Don't Want to Miss a Thing" by Aerosmith. And the interesting thing about this song is that it's not about someone who's in the state of missing somebody. It's in this person doesn't want to miss that person. He doesn't want it to, or the narrator doesn't want it to get to that level. I think that's what ultimately is expressed here, because he says, "I don't want to close my eyes, I don't want to fall asleep because I'd miss you." So he's really the narrator's trying to prevent this state from happening, instead of all the other songs that I mentioned where the person's already in this state of missing someone and feeling lonely. But the interesting thing too is that it's not really, it has kind of a more similar style like John Waite, I'd say, in that it doesn't sound so dreary, compared to Blink 182 and Wish You Were Here, which are more more subdued and not as maybe powerhousey. But with this song, it has that really kind of uplifting feeling, and there's not really kind of a sense of misery or of not being able to reach out to that person. It almost feels like everything is there, and that person just doesn't want to give that ability up. That person doesn't want to want it to get to a state where they miss somebody, and it's almost like trying to. It's almost like the song gives you a sense of like the person's trying to overcome obstacles and gain a sense of happiness within themselves. So I guess you could say that that the song is about not wanting to miss someone, but still feeling those kinds of but knows what those emotions would entail, and is trying to sort of prevent them from happening, and sort of saying, you know, I don't want to be away from you, and I want to develop this close bond with you, and I don't want to feel like that I'm missing you somehow. So I think that's really what the song's trying to get across. It's about not getting into the state of somebody missing them. So I guess it still is a song about somebody not wanting to be in that state, because he knows how ultimately that state would feel. So he tries to counteract it by saying, like, I don't want to close my eyes, I don't want to fall asleep, and being really forthright and powerhousey. And I'm sorry if powerhousey is not a word. I really don't think it is. But what I'm saying is he just gives a lot of power and presence to the song, which makes it, I think, a lot different compared to a lot of the other I Miss You songs that I've heard out there. So I thought that was really interesting, and I think it definitely can be classified as such. So the final song that I wanted to briefly talk about is called The Waiting by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And the interesting thing about this song is that the person doesn't mention the word missing. This is the only song that I could find that or doesn't have like the similar connotations to missing someone like a lot of the other songs that I've already mentioned, because within the song the narrator talks about how cool this particular person is, and is sort of waiting and anticipating to sort of see them again, and I think really what the waiting sort of means is the time period of missing a particular person, and that's the hardest part is missing them and not being able to maybe talk to them or reach out to them, or feeling sort of maybe limited in some capacity, and I think that's really what the song was trying to get across. And the funny thing is too is that it takes it in it has a style that's really different, I think, from the previous songs that I've mentioned. It feels a little bit more like, there's a lot of the waiting is hard, but the feeling you have of seeing that person again is what makes it all sort of worthwhile. Even though it doesn't really express that within the lyrics, I feel like the tone sort of sets up this idea of happy anticipation. You know, it's okay to feel these kinds of emotions, and it's okay to be in the state of waiting. it is the hardest part, but in the end it's it's worth it, because ultimately there will be a time where that person will return to you and have the time spent with you, and it gives that kind of sense of hope and optimism, like that, there are going to be times where, the waiting, is going to be difficult, the missing is going to be hard, the loneliness can drag, but ultimately there is a sense of, that things will work out eventually, and that the waiting and the missing is ultimately what makes the happiness and the experience that you feel with that person more worthwhile. So I really liked this approach to this kind of a song, because it takes it in it takes away a lot of the kinds of misery and lonely aspects that we've seen in a lot of Miss You songs, are songs dealing with the fact of missing somebody. But it takes all of that and puts it in a more optimistic tone, and gives the audience or the listeners a sense of understanding that the waiting is part of life, but it's all the worthwhile, because not everything can be not everything can have that sense of happiness unless there is a sense of longing and of missing. So it kind of is trying to, I think, get that aspect across to people. But it's a really enjoyable song, and I think it's probably one of the more famous Tom Petty songs. I'm not sure, but I do find myself really enjoying that one, and those are really all the songs. I think they're really the ones that I could come up with in a nutshell that sort of reflect my feelings whenever I feel like that I'm missing somebody, or missing a particular person, or missing maybe a place, or a state of mind, or anything. So it's not just, I guess, somebody, but just of missing, I guess you could say. The state of not maybe having something or someone. So I think, again, that these are more open to your interpretation and to your understanding, and that's kind of why I wanted to choose these kinds of songs, because I think they're more open. Maybe some of them are a little bit more specific, but I think you can leave things in a more broader sense, because it's not really addressing specifically a person, and you can take the you and put it in with whoever you want to put it in with. So I think that's really ultimately all I can say. If there are any questions, comments, concerns, more than happy to answer them. But until next time, everybody, bye.